Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm sure this will not provoke anything controversial or provoke any unsolicited or unwarranted motives or statements whatsoever. You know what? Positive vibes all the way. And you know what? Let's cut to the chase, shall we? Now, we're all adults here. Well, at least I hope we're all adults here. And we are going to take a look at this middle ground episode on Jubilee called Does Porn Have a Negative Effect on Society? No Fap versus Porn Stars. If I'm going to... Now, listen, I'm going to open up my discussion for the group. And I'm just going to say for the record right now, here's something you may want to know. A very, very small thing. Back in May of 2025... I went 4 whole weeks without actually logging on to X at all. I stayed completely off that app for a whole 4 weeks. And what I found that being away from it, it didn't improve my life in any way whatsoever, but it also didn't take anything away. And that's the thing I need to bring to the forefront. It's not necessarily whether you use it or not. It's, well, what do you get out of it? Now, with that being said, you could argue whether it's sitting home all day, gooning yourself literally into an early grave, or whether or not you use it as a means of inspiration, if you will, to help release the valve a little bit, and then just get on with your day. I think there are just some people out there who sometimes desperation and stress, it builds up so much inside that, well, just let it be. And, well, which is always why I feel like when I say no fap, I always feel like, well, how else do they relieve stress? Physical, mental, or, otherwise? Because there is a lot of stress that goes on in the modern world. People are worried about war. People are worried about personal finances. People are worried that they're literally going to be single and die alone. And there are also people who are genuinely worried about, well, when's the next good meal going to come from? Or when's the next good day going to come from? So it doesn't surprise me whatsoever when people will turn to certain outlets, not only to make themselves feel good, but also in some way to actually take them out of the real world for a little bit. And this doesn't have to be specifically nailed down to things like porn. It could be through alcohol, it could be through drugs, it could be through television. Addiction, or sometimes as a means of escapism or a gateway ability, isn't too unheard of. And it isn't too unheard of that there are people who will find ways of getting themselves out of the real world. But that's where we're going to start from this. Sometimes I feel like maybe the question we should be having is that, does society paint porn in a negative way? I mean, when you think about it, prostitution is the single oldest industry of all time, and it's not going to stop anytime soon just because artificial intelligence decrees that making money overrides literally everything else. But, actually, with the way artificial intelligence is going on, we are very much almost nearing to the fated end of the book, Who Are You Are, in which when the robots have completely wiped out the last traces of human civilization and all of mankind has been rendered extinct, the robots decide to start building houses just because they can. And very soon, they will just take over us in some way. And if that sounds familiar, well, again, a bit more of a modern idea is that it's literally Brainiac from DC Comics. But let's see if Brainiac is on the way or whether or not this is just science abuse. Let's go.
So if I don't watch porn once a month, I'm going to be happier?
Probably.
I totally
because your brain will start working in a more optimal mode and you'll be like, I didn't even know I could
What's
be
more
this
optimal now than somebody who has 2 degrees successful for themselves can pay off everything that they want?
Welcome to
That's like your brain becoming more optimal. I'm gonna be okay. Oh, we are gonna go on a little journey of discovery, all of us, aren't we? You know, since it's fair, you know what? If I wanted to be involved in porn in any which way, shape, or form, you know what? I would very much prefer it. You know what? If I actually, you know what? I was actually able to sit down and talk with somebody for like a couple of weeks before we did anything, because I reckon it's probably the sort of thing in the industry that people don't really they almost seem to overlook, is the idea that, you know what, they've got to in some way actually like each other, or, you know, be attracted to each other. They don't just, you know, pick two people and say, you know what, there, do something. There's got to be there's a much more professional way through this, surely. And I don't think you need to have an optimal mind to go that far in logic or common sense, really. But let's not shelve the common sense argument into at least an hour into this.
Middle ground, I'm Ryan, your host. To the left, we have Team NoFap, and to the right, porn stars. This should be interesting. Porn has a net negative effect on society. Agreeers, please step forward.
Okay, it's really interesting. So I was thinking about it, and it seems like for some of them, I don't want to, you know, put words in their mouth, but it sounds like they're after it for just like a chunk of the change, right? And so, like, what does that mean?
Jason, and I can see the way the guys are already looking, and the women, they're already looking and saying, you know what, they're looking as though that they are only in this to make money. I would, you know, even if I agree net negative, you know what, I would declare myself out immediately and just join those guys. Now, here's the thing, because there would be I think there's quite a lot of, I don't want to say conservative people, but I think there's even people on both sides who think that there are some people who will do it, you know, to be paid. But why shouldn't they be paid? You know what? Take it from the good book. You know what? Laborers deserve their wages. Some people earn their money by, you know what, swinging a pick. Some by adding up figures. Some by preparing food. Some people by stopping criminals. Some people also earn their living by laying on their backs with cameras staring down at them, with lights beaming holes into their very bodies, whilst other people do this, that, and the other. I'm trying to keep my language as far from the blue corner as I could possibly be. But you know what? You know what? Why shouldn't they be paid? Are they going to say, you know what, they wouldn't do it if they wouldn't get paid? You know what? I would not do it if I wasn't going to get paid. You know what? Because if I wasn't going to get paid, I can guarantee somebody else somewhere would be becoming rich off it. And you know what? It happens in all walks of life. It happens in every single profession. Somebody will try and undercut you by saying, well, we won't pay you any money, but you get to have sex with beautiful women or men, as the case may be, and we will earn every single penny for every single time you look at somebody or do that or hump, as the case might be. But what would you suppose? Unpaid labor? Yeah, I can't see I can't see what would go wrong if that sort of thing would be. And that's a very, very contentious issue right there. The idea that some people are doing it for money. But again, I'm sure there are also some people who are, well, openly very, very keen on the idea of that sort of like fetishization of, like, you know, pay pigs. I've heard about stuff like that, but that's not a true and honest representation of the industry. You're only looking at through the eyes of, you know, one specific niche. It's a bit like the sort of person. It's the sort of person who says all heavy metal music is rubbish because they listen to one song by Cannibal Corpse. It doesn't. You do the rest of the genre disservice by only seeing things through one perspective. I mean, that begs... Now, I'm not saying for 1 second, you know what, become a porn star to know exactly what they do or what they go through or how they even got to where they are. But I'm just saying, try and see it from the way they see it. And by the way, if he thinks that they're doing it just for money, well, again, I think they're gonna set the record straight almost immediately.
Like on the healthy side of like the other end, like
Yeah,
the consumer, right?
He's already pissed.
And I don't think it will, serve people as a whole in a positivity light, rather than they're just serving themselves. Like I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess like my basis is like it doesn't help serve the world in a positive.
So because some people are self-indulgent and because they don't, say, free the world or anything like that, despite the fact that, okay, you know what, I'll tell you another little funny story, is that I once heard on a little have you ever, tell me any boomers if you're watching this right now, have you ever heard of this one television series called Sexcetera? Because it was sort of like a journalistic program, specifically that was all the things that was going on in the world of sex. It might be a little bit dated because it was like the turn of the third millennium was when it came out. But they even ran a segment of this production team called Fuck for the Forest. And it was specifically charity based. All the people who were involved in it were doing it specifically for charity to stop deforestation. In fact, I reckon I may not be able to necessarily name people who do this sort of thing specifically for charity, but you know what? I think there is a lot to be said about those who would be more than happy to do this completely for charity. Because you know what? There's a lot of good to be done in stuff like this. It's just whether or not the implications about, it's the sort of thing where everybody would have to be on board. It's, I'm trying to say. But with that being said, what's Jason here? What's Mr. Highbrow in every sense of the word? What's he done to, serve and, do good for the planet? I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Positive way. It just serves himself in a positive way.
Well, are you saying that porn performers do the world a disservice?
I would say so.
Got it.
I'd say it's like overall, like if it was a ratio of positive to negative, I would say it's 10% positive. I feel like the rest of it is like the 90% is negative.
But what okay, so this guy's contradicted himself in everything he's done because he immediately says there is some positivity in this. Yeah, you know what? He just straight up admitted it, and it undercuts a lot of it because if he was because he says that, but he doesn't say what any of the positives might be. Yeah, I must be honest. That kind of has because anything he says from that point kind of it falls a little, not necessarily on deaf ears, but it makes the logic of his argument. And again, how does he know? How he's never done porn, suspecting. But you know what? How would he know based on stuff like that?
I was going to say, yeah, I would agree with what he's saying about it being a net negative on society. We have higher rates of depression and anxiety in younger men, a lot of which can be associated to compulsive sexual behavior. A lot of these men lose meaning in their lives. We create a culture.
Examples, son. You know what? It's not that I disbelieve in the idea that there is a bit of a gulf, but it's not just porn that does this. A lot of online media and entertainment does that. I heard apparently somebody made a video a few weeks ago about how there's no actual male role models because a lot of things are built on the idea of deceit and deception. Whereas when you think about it, in the world of online of adult entertainment, deception and double crossing people, that sort of thing never makes anybody look good. In fact, actually, if you're going to be getting it out, everything has to come public with it. So you know what? you can't really afford to look as though, you know, you are doing things for ulterior motives, or you're doing things to do a disservice to other people, because you know what? It never makes anybody look good, and you could find yourself segregated from adult entertainment very, very quickly if you are not open and honest about the things you need to be honest, open and honest about. And also, again, these people need to actually sit down and talk to these guys, because you know what? I think just because they've never actually spoken to somebody who actually does that for a living, how would they know? It would be the equivalent of me saying, you know what, people who work on, you know, oil drills and stuff like that are absolutely destroying the planet and destroying the economies because of their work, even if I admitted I have no idea exactly about how many months of the year they are away from their families, their friends, their loved ones, dry land, just, you know, just to do the work in which, you know, I can use my car, or other people can use their vehicles. I'm not saying it's blatant ignorance, but why is his point not based on the things that he's perhaps gone through? He almost tries to look for things like statistics. These guys, I'm sure these guys are not Al Gore's kids, but what about what you personally know? What about what you've gone through? Tell us your story. Maybe that's the sort of thing that would help, maybe give a bit of an insight. It's something we can relate to, because people have a very, very hard time relating to thinking themselves as a statistical unit. It's very, very difficult because numbers do not tell stories. It's the same reason why artificial intelligence cannot tell a story, because that's merely just a system of numbers trying to come up with something. It doesn't work like that.
Starting in the 1960s, where sex is a transactional thing, where there's no biological imperative to have sex with somebody who you are connected to in a relationship or in a spiritual sense. So sex becomes a transaction between two people. And I mean, I think just in basic economic terms, if there's more sex available, then sex is less valuable. So.
Got it.
I'm just gonna politely say the words, it's not the 1960s anymore. I know Brian Wilson, as of when I recorded this, has sadly passed away about 5 days ago. But you know what? It's the days of the Beach Boys and the Beatles and, you know, Cliff Richard. Those days are long gone. It's not like that anymore. And even if you think it is, it isn't going to actually stop anybody anytime soon. That's all I'm going to say.
I am a cognitive neuroscientist, and I have written a best-selling book called Mind Over Explicit Matter on porn addiction recovery. I call it the...
Okay, you know what? Okay. A bit of a longer rant, but can I just say, and pardon me for sounding incredibly rude and abrupt when I say this, but you know what? And maybe this is just a sign of maturity more than anything else, but you know what? Based on where I think I'm going in life, I would never start or introduce myself by listing my achievements, anything like substantial I've done. I wouldn't say any books I've written, or, you know, because one, because people don't start conversations like that. I think, and I'm not saying the reason why Dr. Trish here did it is because she wanted to make herself look and feel important, but here's the thing. I think there was all, but who's to say that her science or her profession, who's to say it's the sort of thing that's going to work? It's a one box tick all. And you know what? I think there are also plenty of people. It's just I sort of do go back to the idea of it tries to make her sound or look important. And I'm not saying, of course, she doesn't or anything like that. But what I am trying to say, I think that's the way to do it, is the fact that, well, Just because, people watch porn, it doesn't mean they're immediately addicted. Because I think it's also where we draw the line between addiction and what is actually going on in a person's life. What brings a person to the stage where they do jack off 3 times a day, almost for an entire year? What is going wrong in a person's life where that's the... Listen, if you're jacking off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday because there's soddle better things to do, what's going wrong? Or is that the best we could hope for? Is that the best we've got to look forward to when life just becomes a system of, well, may as well do it, there's nothing better to do? Now, of course, we need to remind ourselves, and I think it's an important thing to say, even at this point, is that, you know what? Is that not more down to the direction in some people's lives? They feel like they're not going anywhere. And is there a thing to say that even by the standards of, well, this conversation, this dialogue, it seems as though we're just trying to say, you know what, we'll blame somebody else. Back in the early 2000s, we'll blame video games for the outbreak of violence. In the 2010s, let's blame, pop stars because we've allowed them to become successful and famous, and now we treat them to a certain standard. And even in the 2020s, we seem to be up to the standard of, we will treat anybody who becomes recognized or well known to such a standard. People who are probably not capable of handling it, because either it was because it happened by accident, whether it was because, Hawk Tuah is the first thing that immediately springs to mind. I mean, she became famous for literally the sort of worst reason I think I've possibly ever seen or ever expect anyone to become famous, because they did something that some people found funny. And that's apparently all it takes. In the eyes of some people, is that's about as high as the bar goes in terms of, well, they're the sort of person that we need to start taking seriously. I'm not trying to sound bitter or jealous or anything like that. It's just, I watched the whole thing and I kind of can't really believe what I'm seeing. It feels as though it's not quite real. But let's get back to it. And by the way, if porn addiction really is as bad as they're trying to make out, and because I've seen a lot more other things about, things like porn addiction, and, why is this not being treated as though it was like a national emergency? Or why is it not being openly discussed more in the eyes of an education board, or people who would have a lot more influence and say in how we go about this?
A silent tsunami, because basically that brain dysregulation that happens in a person's brain, which is below the surface, that's how a tsunami starts. There's a crack in the ocean floor. Nobody knows it's happening. But then it creates mental and physical health issues, which there's a significant rise in anxiety and depression. There's also what I call porn-induced ADHD, because scientific studies have shown that not only is the structure of the brain impacted, but function also. So people can't focus, their productivity decreases. Physically, it leads to erectile dysfunction, which is destroying people's relationships.
Can you say a little bit more about physical change to
I'll just be the first to say this, and, well, okay, maybe again I'll get a little bit more personal for this, but you know what? Here's an little interesting thing about, well, myself, that, it seems fair enough. I am in no way, shape or form can safely say that I am remotely interested whatsoever in being in a relationship. Not because I don't want to be in one, but you know what? I actually enjoy being single. And and I bring it back to that whole topic about what I said about X. I have absolutely, maybe this is a little bit more complicated, because just because I've never been in one doesn't mean to say I wouldn't enjoy being in a relationship or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to have any children. That's the other case. That's the other point I want to make right there. Whether or not this opinion changes anytime soon is a good point. I have always said, because my dad, I was born when my dad was 39 years old, and I've always kind of secretly told myself, if I get to the age of 39 and I don't have any children, I'm literally not going to try so ever again. So if I don't have any kids between now and the next 12 years, that's it. I am literally shutting up shop for good. But again, just to bring it back to the idea of like not being in a relationship and stuff like that, some of you may be saying, you know what, fair enough, that's just sort of how it is. It doesn't mean to say that you don't have those urges or anything like that just because you don't want to be in a relationship. That's perfectly fine. That's your choice, and you are more than welcome to your opinion, no matter what anybody says. And I like that. However, I do bring it back to the idea, the thought, rather, that because I've never been in a relationship, well, how would I know? But that's not a good excuse to start trying to look to being in a relationship just to see what it's like. Because one, it's not fair for her. I am not going to start, treating women as though they are going to be like physical functional experiments just to stimulate or to satisfy my curiosity as to what being in a relationship is going to be like. And second, I don't think any woman whatsoever would view themselves like doing it. And also, and that's actually, but I'll tell you what, that's actually the other thing I wanted to say is that but honestly, at this stage of my life, for what they're worth, I can't really see a reason why a woman would want to be in a relationship with me anyway. And I'm not saying that to win brownie points or anything like that, but you know what? I haven't yet, and I don't really see why. Okay, you know what? One last thing, and then we'll move on. We are nearly 30 minutes into this recording, and we haven't even got past the 3-minute mark. That's crazy. But you know what? I'll just say this. If by some miracle of chance, and I really am going to view it as a miracle of chance, I ever become famous for anything I write, anything I do or say, yada yada yada, most of the time people become famous because of the things they don't say or the things they want to say, but it's something else they've done that actually makes them become famous. Interesting stuff, that. But what I will say is that it will be interesting to see what sort of attention it does bring. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity. Oh yes, there is. Believe you me, guys. My dad had tried to, it was one of my dad's first aspirations in life was to work in journalism. Yes, absolutely, he can tell you there is such a thing as bad publicity. Absolutely, and he knew that when he was 15 years old. But what we're going to say, and we haven't even heard what the porn stars are even going to say at this point. Though what I am going to just quickly touch on before we before we continue, where do we toe the line between addiction and as a means of stimulant, as a means of of relaxation? What is the point? Is there a specific definition, or is there a national statistic or an outline or just a sort of a time and place in people's minds about what counts as being too much? Because if the answer is no, then addiction, as far as this video or even myself is concerned, it's just a word. And words can be such futile things, as some people have managed to prove. But let's keep rolling.
To the brain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a study that shows that there is basically the reward centers are smaller where, you would think they'd be larger, but it's because of that desensitization in the reward center. And then that's in the midbrain. The reward pathways feed forward to the frontal lobe. Those pathways are impacted too, so people can't think.
Shall we bring the disagreeers?
Let's do it.
Please join us.
And there is a lot more people who do disagree.
I mean,
so-
I feel like it's not our fault that y'all can't push the computer away. Like, we providing a service and doing a job. We're not forcing anyone to watch porn. That's a decision that you make on your own. We don't force anyone.
I like Santana already, and you know what? He's absolutely right. It's a choice. It's not somebody has told you to do it. It's not somebody that you are born and bred to do it. If you want to do it, you can. If you don't want to do it, no. You say no. And that's the thing. That's that level of, you know what? I like it immediately. And you know what? Santana, I reckon Santana, and again, don't correct me if I'm wrong. He might be watching this. I have absolutely no idea. But you know what? I'm sure there's been many, many situations. Maybe we've all been had this. Is that we've sort of had to be told things, or we've been told to do things, and we say no. And it doesn't have to do anything with sex. It could be, all manner of things, to do a test, to, have our hair cut or anything like that. We don't want to do it, and you know what? It's as simple as that. If you don't want to do something, then just people telling you you've got to do it, it isn't going to convince people either way. And when it comes to this argument about porn having a negative effect, a net negative effect on society, well, again, if you don't want to feed into these people, if you don't want them to become rich, then don't give them attention. Completely boycott the idea and don't mention it. Because if you mention it, names will start floating around. And when names start floating around, people will look into this. It's, you know what, I don't really know what else I'm meant to say. And you know what? I like the fact that that is absolutely and it's going to be hard to justify, well, why can't you do that? If you are, because even for people who do it almost unconsciously, there has to be some point going on inside their brains where they still have decided, well, better see what's on Pornhub today. You know what I mean? There's got to be something inside where they still have made that choice.
Do you think it's a net positive or a net negative?
I mean, I think it's a positive thing.
What's positive about it that you believe brings the service to the to
because
other
you
people?
have the option of being able to watch it or not watch it. You have that option yourself to do that. It makes you feel good. Like, it makes you release. It makes you feel all kinds of things, arousement in sexuality. It helps you be more confident about your body. For me, porn has been very positive to me, especially being a plus-size boy in the gay porn industry. I deal with people always coming at me in the industry because of my size. And in gay porn, it's not really acceptable to be a plus-size boy. So for me, porn has helped me be more confident.
And that's absolutely true. You know what? That's why I made the point earlier about, this is not the 1960s anymore. We've kind of got over that hurdle in which people are not only comfortable being who they are. It may not be healthy, but then again, that's something for them to figure out. I can't sit here and start saying to people it's wrong to be, a plus size person because they're not going to live a long life. That's not for that. I do not have the power or the authority to start lecturing to people about how long they're going to live just because somebody told me that fat people aren't going to live as long as thin people, which is exactly the sort of logic people do follow. Let me tell you the reason why. Because first of all, I'm not necessarily, I'm no spring onion myself, but you know what? It's got nothing to do with me. Let him live his own life. Let him get on with it. I think it's, and you know what? I've had to listen to this sort of bullshit about people telling me not to be like that, or not to look like people like that, or not to aspire to people who do this. And I've had this for many years. And the problem I always say, and the thing it always comes back down to is, you're making it sound as though the choices they've made automatically make them a bad person. And that's the sort of thing we have a it's a fetish where we immediately point fingers at people. And you know what? It doesn't work. And why does it not work? Because that's the sort of logic they had during the 1960s as well. They pointed fingers. They say hippies are the problem. They say Mexicans are the problem. They say the Vietnamese are the problem. They say women are the problem. They say black people are the problem. I've seen this even today, and I don't believe a word of it. You know why? Because trying to gaslight and try to guilt trip people into thinking they're horrible human beings just for existing doesn't work, because you know what? They are living their lives and they are absolutely enjoying every second of it. And you're trying to tell me that when they are enjoying their best lives and they're not doing anything wrong, then why are you trying to make me feel as though I should expect them to feel that they're going to be automatically guilty about it? That is simply not going to work, and you can't lecture that sort of thing to me, because one, I won't buy it. Second, what do they know about them that I don't? That suggests that that is the only thing to do. It's lib and it's completely incorrect. In fact, that level of discrimination, if you want, you could almost indirectly call it discrimination. It's actually going to cause a lot more problems, and it's going to divide people even more, because there are people who are going to be so close-minded and conservative to the idea that, you know what, they'll start raising things where, you know what, maybe the prospect of being, or the idea of being gay at all is going to be considered something that is going to negatively affect society. Just saying. And if you're suggesting we're going to start creating some sort of perfect utopia or society in which people are going to literally walk around with chastity belts for the rest of time, two things about that, and then I promise we'll continue. One, it won't happen, because a perfect society doesn't exist, because a perfect society does not have perfect people. Two, the beast doesn't change. When the beast is hungry, it wants feeding. And trust me when I say this, the beast will, in some way, shape or form, will find ways to get fed. Moving on.
In my body and stuff like that. And I know people who watch my porn, who are like me, come to me all the time and say, watching your porn has made me more confident.
It taught me sexual experiences. I had, going into 5th grade, they taught you sex. A boy and a girl has sex, but I didn't know what that looked like, So, sure, it could be bad. It could teach you crazy things or whatever, But for me personally, it taught me a lot of things. Like, I'm not gonna go ask my mom, you give a blowjob, or like my friends at a young age when I have a boyfriend. Like, that's something that it's honestly a research point in some aspects. For some people.
Honestly, I would characterize that as a net negative, because that is, science now shows that that's how porn is, how most kids are learning about sex, and it's hypersexualized. And we know there's an
well, one, porn is hypersexualized. You're not kidding about that, but it's kind of the whole point, isn't it? Secondly, no, by the way, I did not learn about sex through porn. I learned it, through education. I never did have technically the birds and the bees talk with my parents or anything like that. But you know what? Again, it's sex education in school. And again, this is, maybe it's a generational thing, but then again, how does she know? And how is science going to prove that every kid in America has only learned about porn or learned about sex because of porn? I say that's extremely irresponsible parenting if you're just allowing that to happen under your nose. I mean, what do you guys think? Do you think it's borderline dangerous if we are going to get serious? And it's almost as though, again, blame porn stars for doing it, not the people who should be protecting people from that, because it involves things that they simply don't understand.
Increase in violence. And so now we have young people, punching, choking, anal sex is up. And we have young people now
But I
learning
don't
that
see
this is
anal
healthy.
sex as violent.
Well, it can be, but the violent piece of porn isn't just anal sex, but it covers kind of this, again, continuum overarching. But now with kids having their phones in their pocket, they don't have the opportunity to learn from healthier ways. I think that is the unique perspective that I've had because I wasn't addicted to porn, yet I was very close to someone that was. So having an outside view plus having the education to understand it, I work with a lot of people. They don't have the awareness until they do. But usually that's because they have significant mental and physical health issues.
I don't believe that everyone who watches a porn video from their first time watching it is going to now have a problem. I think that there are plenty of people who can make that distinction.
Most people do if they continue to watch porn. So, I call it the seeds of addiction, but of course seeds have to be watered. If you don't water seeds, they don't grow. But for people who develop a habit, and there's scientific studies that show consuming porn one time a month still leads to compulsive behavior.
So
What? Once a month is all it takes to... Okay, you know what? I if I'm honest, I'm not even too sure what I'm supposed to say to something like that. Because, well, what about people who go to the gym more than once a month? Are they classed as addicted? I don't know if you've noticed, lady, but gym memberships are pretty expensive. You know what? Why not make the most of your time? Because you're paying for it. Most of the time you can get porn absolutely for free. And again, I put it to, she says she knew somebody who was very close to being addicted, but she's not in any way addicted herself. Have any of these people ever actually been, quote unquote, addicted to porn? Because I think the problem we run there is that, you know what, we run you run the risk of just trying to say it's porn fault. It's not my fault for not knowing how to control myself. Or somehow it's somehow porn's fault that, you know what, it's invoking violence, despite the fact that no discernible, no credible studio, agency, anything like that, not even the people who run the website, would ever come out, disclaimer, by the way, guys, it's absolutely fine to, knock the absolute shit out of somebody, to choke somebody, to make somebody cry, to make somebody bleed. No one in the world is ever going to say something like that, because can you not see the backlash that sort of thing would create? And not just from people who disagree, but people who work in the profession would absolutely have a walkout.
Oh, who's not addicted to porn?
People who don't watch it.
That's it. Like you
That's
can't
it.
healthily take this
so
in
when
at
it
all.
comes to brains, it's the same with alcohol. Most people who consume alcohol regularly do have a dependency
But
on it.
there's no possible.
Well, again, that doesn't work either. You know what? I would say I drink maybe one bottle, maybe, and when I say bottle, we're talking something like this. On average, maybe once every 2 weeks. You know what? On average, I could probably go 3 whole months without even having to drink it. That does not make me addicted. It's just so happened I've had a very long week at work, and you know what? It's going to be an even longer week coming up. I like to imagine it's some level of compensation for working very unsuitable and unsocial hours, and yeah, I don't. People who aren't addicted, people who don't watch porn are the ones who aren't addicted to it. Can I please? It's not often I say this, but can somebody in the comment section please show me that study? Show me if there's any legs that thing to stand on whatsoever. Because I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. And why are they always immediately trying to say it, go to extremes and say addiction? Why can't they just say something like, again, this is so frustrating.
Possible have a beer put, and then that was
For some people, but there's tolerance building, escalation over time. And that goes back to your point, Logan, that people don't know until they know. But most people are not aware until basically there's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
I personally don't think most people have an addiction to it. I think that what is being considered an addiction on this side of the spectrum is not considered an addiction on this side. Just
There's
because we watch,
definition to addiction.
yeah, just because we watch something maybe once a month or whatever doesn't necessarily. To me, I'm more addicted to my phone, to food, to everything else besides that. That's the least addictive thing.
Well, there's
in my life.
qualifiers to the definition of addiction.
Oh, here
and
we go.
I tell people, just try to stop watching. You don't even have to tick the 6 boxes, because most people who consume porn, they might be able to go a little while, but they will have withdrawal symptoms. They'll have an increase in anxiety, anger, irritability, up and down. It's about there's dopamine in the system, then there's a dopamine deficit. So
Well, there's that, but don't you also think it's from the point of view of somebody who is in that field that maybe they should have some level of responsibility to, if they do have a problem, that they should maybe seek out some sort of help? Now, of course, maybe that's again where we outline what technically constitutes a problem. But again, you know what, maybe Dr. Firth doesn't, but then you know what, this might be the most contentious issue of the lot. And maybe this is the sort of thing that even I know fine well I'm not going to get a right answer about this. And I'm going to ask you a question, guys. What is the difference, in your guys' opinion, between a man being addicted to porn versus a woman who is addicted to porn? And that's why, again, maybe I'll come back to that question, but I don't know exactly. It's if we're going to make this a question about biology, then you know what. I'm trying to actually find the right word. Is that you know what? It doesn't have to be. You know what? Sexual frustration isn't just the sort of thing that, you know what, can erupt just because a person has stopped watching porn. It could also come down to the fact that they just feel, alone genuinely, and they feel the idea that, you know what, no woman is ever going to look at them ever again. And it may be a bit more of a nihilistic point of view, but you know what? I think there are some people who do generally feel that way, but who don't really know how to express it out of fear that it makes them look slightly pathetic somehow. But it's not pathetic. What is pathetic, however, is the idea that, well, we'll blame porn. Well, that's the easiest way to go, and it hasn't got to do with anything else through bad experiences, or bad decisions and stuff like that, or traumatic events or incidents, or a growing sense of nihilism in a person's self, in the way they view the news, or they view current events, or just see the world just around them as it is.
I don't watch porn once a month, I'm going to be happier.
yeah, probably.
I don't.
That's the thing. You don't know until you see the other side.
People say that to me all
I've
the
been
time.
on every side of things. I
They
had a
don't
purity
believe it
ring
until
growing
they
up. I've been
experience
on
it. Because your brain will start working in a more optimal mode, and you'll be like, I didn't even know I could
What's
be
more
this
optimal?
Optimal my backside. You know what? Again, I'm probably just going to go on a limb and say this right now, but does she not know actually how hard people who work in the adult entertainment actually do work? Not only for trying to in some ways try to make contacts with people, but also those who try to work with cameras, work with lighting, editing, who try to run whole websites by themselves to upload their material. And it's a brain to work more optimal. I've never heard such. So what are you trying to say is that people who I'm going to make a suggestion. The reason why she's wearing that coat as well is to try and make her look somewhat more important. But it doesn't be. But this whole thing, I think, has backfired. And you know why I think it's backfired? Because it displays that for everything she's saying she knows of, because apparently science has backed it up, it also shows a startling level of arrogance. Because again, she comes out with saying that your brain will work better if you are not addicted to porn. I don't know about you, but I feel like Dan over there is having some. I think it's gonna be talking to a wall with a coat.
Now then, somebody who has 2 degrees successful for themselves can pay off everything that they want. How is that not an Excel?
Well, it's about, back to your focus. And, I don't know what you have going on, but it's about that brain map, if it's green, it's about your state. And so your state changes. So when people...
Well, okay, if you want an idea for state changing, well, Violet Myers... Is it true that I'm pretty sure it is true that she used to work just in a supermarket before she got into into porn, and not only does she still do that, but she is also a YouTuber, a Twitch streamer, and she actually has a very, very positive influence among Twitch streamers. In fact, some would even say it's even more popular than Pokimane. Because you know what? Because I think Violet knows. I think she knows. I think she knows a lot more than I think people will give her credit for, and it's not going to be because of people like her telling people like Violet that they don't know as much or they can't think clearly because of what they do, or the infatuation they have for what they do. You know what? Why not be interested or be a part of it if that's what you're working in? You know what? That just makes sense, if you ask me.
People work with me, they'll say, I didn't even know I could be calmer. I didn't know I could be more focused. I didn't know I could have less anxiety. I don't feel depressed. My sexual arousal for my partner is through the roof in a way that it never was before. So
no, and I see, I think it isn't a one-size-fits-all type of thing. I think that there are plenty of people, it's going to vary person to person. I think that there are a lot of people, because even if we take away pornography, if we look at something like something like the keto diet, there's plenty of people who will be, okay, you can find a lot of evidence backing, okay, you'll lose weight on this, you'll sleep better, this and that. And then there's other people who are like, it didn't work for me, I had headaches, I had this, and both can be true. So is that not the same thing? Why is there no possible way to have a healthy relationship with pornography, with masturbation?
It goes back to the dopamine dependency of the super normal stimulus.
But there's so much that gives you dopamine. People get that from work. They get an unhealthy relationship with, as far as
dopamine
getting more
from
You can be addicted to work, but the dopamine from work is significantly lower. It's not a super normal stimulus. It's a normal stimulus. So in real life, probably the highest normal stimulus is skydiving. It's like your system is completely jacked up. You're overstimulated. That is probably in real life.
I think what she's trying to get at is adrenaline. And I saw the way Dan just kind of leaned in a little forward, and she was gonna be like, "What? Sorry, say that again." But I think that's what she's trying to get at. It's adrenaline, is the thing that's gonna be going through people's veins. But you don't need to be nearly 20,000 feet above the Earth's surface to get a sense of adrenaline. Why can't you get adrenaline, or I don't know, from having a wank, or I always wanted to say I don't think I've ever said wank on camera before. I feel like a new man now. I feel like I've lost my virginity all over again. Oh dear. But also, people get a sense of adrenaline from actually openly talk about things they're very, very passionate about, because it brings about a level of endorphins that release from a person's brain, because not only did they not realize they had the capacity of being able to talk about something for this amount of time and this amount of depth, but you know what? It makes them feel more confident. She's trying to come across as the idea as though that doesn't count because that's just an overstimulant, or we're concentrating. But does... you know what? I can't stand this anymore. And there's still 46 minutes to go. Oh, God help me.
The highest level stimulus you could get.
But how can we get these people that are really compulsive and have addictions, how can we get these people help?
My answer would obviously be organized religion, specifically Catholicism. Now, that's obviously just me, but I think it's clear that we've departed from a unifying ethic that brings everybody together. And then there's people on the fringes that basically just think that, well, pleasure is the best thing possible, or, you know, power is the best thing possible, and we've lost the thing that puts everybody at the center, that brings everybody together.
Are you saying everyone should be religious?
In utopia? Sure, yeah.
Okay, so that's your utopia.
What did I just say? Huh? I said that 20 minutes ago. You know what? It's not going to work. And you know why? Because you can't have perfect people. It's not going to work like that. Dude. Because there are going to be people who, again, they know immediately that they don't agree with that. And I said it before, I don't think it's right for people to suddenly think the world is going to hand out a handbasket who are going to join their cause just because in their mind it's going to create the perfect world. Which is what he just said, by the way.
Utopia. Mine is not.
Yeah, no.
Well, I would, to build on that, I would believe that everyone should have like some sort of core values to not serve other humans, but just to bring positivity to the world. And that's why I, stepped forward, because I didn't believe that, being a porn star, and I wanted to be one at one point. Like I actually got that deep in the game, and I was like, wow, So,
you still can.
I'm all good, man.
They want you to be Catholic. He wants you to be a porn star.
We found the middle ground.
Right.
Something I don't like is when a religious person tries to tell me what I need to do with my life.
Yeah,
That's my problem.
I agree. I think people push other people away from the church, or just whatever religion, right? I feel like that's just a relationship that you need to have. But one of the greatest things that you can do is pray, or just manifest, right? So that's such a great thing. It's one of
Now I suppose again this is one of those things I said. You know what? Fair enough to him for saying that. And I do agree that, you know what, maybe in some ways, because I feel like I've talked more in favor of the porn stars as opposed to people who say it can't ever have any force for good whatsoever. But let's just bear in mind, guys, that I think sometimes porn can be extremely alienating for people, not just for those who've done it for so long, and but there's also that sense that, well, how do you think the world looks at them and stuff like that? But again, it's the sort of thing where it comes back to the whole idea of, you know what, why have we got to have the opinion of why we have to be negative towards something just because of what they do? You know what? If they're not breaking any laws, if they're not doing anything illegal, why? And I'm not saying we're going to roll out the red carpet and we're going to start fetishizing it again, but they have the opinion that just because it doesn't work out, or because, you know what, there was something went wrong, it means it's immediately going to deter people. I think the sort of people who do that, who deter people from getting into it, either they've told them some home truths, or they try to sell them up a one-way street and they were going to take advantage of them. And taking advantage happens both in the adult industry and outside of it as well. It's a scummy thing to do, don't get me wrong, And you know why? Because nobody looks positively on those who take advantage of other people. Nobody.
Of God's gifts to us, right? And so, can one of you tell me like 3 core values you have for being a porn star?
Core values, I want to make money, I want to feel good about what I'm doing, and I want to make other people feel good as well. That's just off the top of my head.
Making people feel good in like a pleasurable sense of, masturbation?
Yeah, sure. If that's one of the ways, then sure, why not?
I can't necessarily think of a lot of ways that'll probably.
Also, I think it's a little bit scummy about the way they try to almost force the idea they've got to grandstand what they do. Because you know what, it's saying, you know what, there you are, they are only self-indulgent and they are only, it's only about what they want. But if they're that bitter about it, then you know what, I don't think making them feel guilty is going to get them to change their minds anytime soon. You can't, guilt tripping doesn't work. Maybe it worked back in the 60s, but it doesn't work now. I'm sorry, it just doesn't work like that.
Probably gonna be a good argument as far as why it's necessarily a positive thing, but I just don't view it as something that's negative in the right person's hand, I guess. Porn itself as a form of entertainment, I think the fact that it is just something that is out there that if you choose to watch it, you can because you have the freedom to, is a positive thing.
I just had a question for you.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you can't necessarily think of any reasons right now as to why porn would be beneficial to society.
Yeah, but I also,
can.
yes, but
Does that concern you at all?
no, because I don't think it needs to be. I don't necessarily think video games, I can't think of a lot of ways that video games are positive other than it just being fun, mindless entertainment.
Right.
I think there's a place in a functioning society for mindless entertainment to just be okay in moderation. And I don't think it's selfish either to want pure.
I think Logan might, I think when he says mindless, I think he means it in the sense that video games are not in any way sentient. I think that's the way he puts it. And you know what? He's right. Sometimes, you know what? Tetris is not high art. Let's be completely honest. Elden Ring is not high art. It's very, very fun. But it's not high art. Because the idea of, high art or something that is art in a general sense is that it can't really have any other function other than itself. Do you think porn can be considered art? Well, I think it's almost also down to things like function, interpretation, and also I have noticed that there is one other person who has actually not opened their mouth yet on the other side of the fence. I wonder if he's just sort of watching this and thinking, coming to some sort of conclusions. Or maybe they just edited that stuff out. Who knows?
Pure entertainment sometimes.
All right, this has been really interesting, and I think we have more topics to get to. So why don't we get to the next topic?
Sounds good.
Masturbation has many health benefits. Agreeers, please step forward.
Okay, here we go.
Well, you know what? Since you're hesitant, I want to start with you.
I just want to say okay, I don't even think about porn or masturbation anymore, but sometimes when you do get that idea, you know what I mean, and you ain't got no person to talk to, all of a sudden you start going crazy, like, what the f***? Oh, shit, I'm horny, you know what I mean? Like the blue balls be kicking in, you know what I mean, right? But the thing with me is, I refuse to
I will say, there is the most immediate health benefit to masturbation. I'd say at least the one thing it does spring to mind is it's not just a way of excreting pressure, although I think it absolutely does that. But also sometimes it is a little bit of a deterrent from other things going on around you. You can't really, when you're trying to, jack off and stuff like that, you can't really be thinking about news outlets about Tehran being under attack by Israel. You don't really think about that sort of thing. If you do, I have very, very serious concerns, and I think it will probably raise more questions than answers. But again, you stop thinking about how some of the really horrible things that goes on in the world. It's the old thing that Charlie Brooker said, is that If you're sad, watching a light entertainment program will lift you from the doldrums. And if you're happy, watching a news bulletin will bump you back down to reality until it's time for the next entertainment program. And so on. It's a process called infinite distraction. And regulating your mood via masturbation could be considered a form of infinite distraction. And tell me what technically would encounters infinite distraction. You tell me. Because if it's not watching the news or watching comedy, it's doing work, being stuck in traffic, something that's going to be keeping yourself occupied.
Still masturbate, even though it's hurting. So it get to the point, like, sometimes I go crazy, like, so I gotta go meet somebody, like, oh shit, you know what I mean, right? So, but when I let that out, all of a sudden I come back to my normal sense. So I will say it helps that I ain't got to deal with the pain of pelvic cramps and blue balls. I'll give you that much. And if I remember right, ain't you supposed to nut to avoid like prostate cancer or something? Ain't you supposed to?
I'm not We're not the scientists.
I don't know.
Oh my wow. I mean, I feel like there's nothing wrong with masturbation. I feel like masturbation is very healthy mentally and everything. It's nothing wrong with busting 10 nuts a day and doing all the other things and stuff like that. It's good for your health and mentally, and it relaxes your body. So I feel like masturbation is nothing wrong with that. I mean, even chronic masturbators. So yeah.
Quick question. I want to overtime.
Yeah.
Can you bust 10 nuts in a day?
I could bust multiple.
Oh yeah,
but
he's a porn star.
Wow, I know y'all got suits.
I mean, to be fair, that's a new one on me. I don't even think you could get through at least 4 a day without damaging your fingers or dislocating them. Can you dislocate your fingers while masturbating? Again, it's the thing. If you don't know, how are you ever going to find out?
We can all bust 10 nuts in a day.
Man, I got like 3 tops and I'm out of it, man. Go ahead, though, man. 10 is crazy, but go ahead.
You could say, the opposing side could say that maybe it's desensitizing you to real life sex, but for me personally, it's only given me more ideas and been an inspiration for, crazier times. So I think as long as you're doing it in, a healthy amount, whatever that is to you, should be okay.
I mean, as long as you could go to work. That's the only thing that matters. As long as you can go to work.
What if it is your work?
Yeah,
It's 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yeah, I would say like the average person, like the non-compulsive masturbator. For one, I don't think it's anyone's business what you do, and then 2, I also think like if you don't have a problem with it or you don't feel like you have a problem with it, it's not affecting your day-to-day life. I think it's completely natural. I think humans have been doing it forever.
I've always had a really healthy relationship to masturbation. So obviously I'm doing it more now, but like before I was a porn star, I would maybe do it like not even once a week. So when I'd feel that like, I guess, urge or the horniness, I'd just go do it. And then if it's in the morning, I feel more energized somehow. And then if it's at night before I go to bed, I'm just like out like a light. I don't have to like take melatonin. And then another part of it for me has been kind of spiritual. Because if you know about like the chakras, the sacral chakra is all about your sexuality and your creativity and your emotions. So using that kind of as like a manifestation technique. I was going to say masturbation. But I've learned that like a woman harnessing her sexual energy and like using that is really powerful. And it just makes me feel like so creative.
You know what? People would immediately pop on the fact that I'm not really into that whole chakra stuff. I will, however, say this. I once had a tarot reading earlier in the year. It was, long story short, it was probably one of the lowest points of my entire life. And I asked somebody if I could have like a tarot reading because maybe there was something I was not seeing. Maybe there's something that perhaps I needed to know exactly where they felt I was or what did they think was going on. So they immediately turned over the first card, and it was the Emperor upside down. I asked them what it was, and they said that merely that your kingdom currently is in ruins, but it is up to you to put it back together again. And I don't really recall doing anything else outside of that, but that was the thing that stuck by me. Things were in ruins. Stuff had to be rebuilt. it gives you a sense of almost like a new lease on life, knowing that maybe from an outside perspective, something you weren't expecting to hear or something you expected to be said, and it seems to, and they didn't know anything about me, by the way. That's the thing I've got to like just point out. And I quite liked it. I quite liked what they had to say, and I felt, you know what, there was more to it than I was giving myself credit for. So I can understand absolutely why people would be interested. Being open-minded, that's what we need. We need open minds and just to think about this. Maybe there's something these guys are learning as well. Who knows? I mean, when you say things about, a utopia and stuff like that is a bit... it's something that even people who take their religion seriously would have serious objections to. I think a priest would be very, very... they would be very, very skeptical.
And I have so many ideas, and I feel so sexy.
But as porn stars, we want y'all to bust y'all nuts and stuff because that's how we get paid.
Fascinating. Let's bring in the
I mean, that's not
I learned so much.
Tell me you're not a porn star.
Man, highlight of my day. All right, disagreeers. Thoughts?
What do you believe that you manifest when you masturbate? Like, what do you think? Do you think nothing, or like?
I think
it's
my life.
subconscious?
You can manifest money, you can manifest experiences, just that like the creative energy within your sacral chakra. And if you don't know anything about spirituality, you're probably gonna look at me like I'm crazy, and it's completely separate, not completely separate from science. Like there are parts of manifestation that have to do with like scientific basis.
Yeah, well, I love the idea of chakras, and chakras are actually energy centers in your body that are aligned with where there's more nerve energy. But when you overstimulate a chakra, then they're no longer balanced, and that is an issue with overstimulating the sacral.
Well, how would you expect it to work out then if they're trying to bust a nut? What do you suspect is going to take place? And I don't know, again, I don't know how if these guys have watched porn at all, the non-fappers, I should say, for obvious reasons. What do you why is, I think when you're in that tense of intense physical activity, you kind of you don't consider balance. You consider just, again, more maintaining your breathing and praying to God your knees don't buckle, or your hips stop working and stuff like that, or all of a sudden you climax too early, or whether or not it just goes limp and all the sense of satisfaction is gone. Because I can't think of anything that would be a bigger turn-off if all of a sudden you just instantaneously just decided, you know what, you don't like them anymore, or you don't like what's going on. That's the sort of thing I feel like what would happen if you try to like force your chakras to be realigned. Or if we're going through the idea that maybe chakras are I think that's the sort of thing that's meant to be more powerful than you, and I suspect that sense of physical sensation is probably dominate proceedings. But what do you suppose is going to happen anyway? Goodness knows what the idea would be if you were trying for children and you just couldn't do it.
Chakra, because then it takes away from all the others.
Okay.
And going back to the idea of hypersexuality, then it accidentally, inadvertently puts you in a hypersexual place where, then it feels empowering to you, but it might not necessarily be balanced.
Okay, but from my perspective, I'm not like doing it it's like when I feel like that like energy starting to circulate in my body, like I'm gonna do something with it. I'm not like every day being like, I need to like hypersexualize myself. I need to do this. Like, I just feel like I have a very balanced relationship with my job and then like my own personal masturbation. Mm-hmm. So it's like hasn't like unbalanced my life. Like
do you feel like your job has taken away from sexuality with another person?
No, I've dated not plenty of men, like while I've been a porn star, but the times that I have, like I've really enjoyed the experiences with them.
Actually, I found that through shooting porn, it's enhanced.
You know what? I've got an idea. I've actually got an idea. And if you can hear what's going on in the background, for some reason, my dad is in a vain attempt to try and, you know, prove that the car still works. It's just running the engine for some reason. It's just a thing he does. Just if you want to know what that sound is in the background. Oh. There we are, done. Okay, so in case you want to know what that was, I literally just messaged Santana XXL. If for no other reason, maybe he wants to possibly do... I told him that what I thought about his opinion so far and how I felt like the dialogue was actually fascinating. And you know what? I asked him whether or not if there was anything else he wanted to add, or if not, I just said hope he's having a good day and stuff like that. You know what? I feel like it's the least he deserves. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, because you know what? If nothing else, you know what this whole conversation, this whole video is beginning to teach me more than anything else, is that there are incredibly open and incredibly insightful people who openly want to talk about this. And not just have that, but also demonstrate, actually, there's a lot of good to be for people to be involved in this. And I'm not just saying that because, by contrast, the people who don't make this look good, who sound like they're coming straight out of an Aldous Huxley novel, there is still a lot to be said. And I think there is actually a lot more positivity than more than just 10%. More than these guys are willing to let on. So that's... keep going.
Enhanced my personal relationship with a significant other, but I come home to my person, you know, and so that's my person. So when you have sex with them, it's emotional, it's sensual, it's you love them. But when you're having sex on set, it's, you know, it's a job, you're acting, you're, you know, whatever. So personally for me, it's made the two separate, but I do know men who have a hard time in their sex life who do shoot porn, but because they're using their dick so much.
Yeah. And I love that distinction, because what you're talking about is the artificiality of, you know, your job at performance.
Yeah.
And then you being able to experience that sensual experience with a partner. From my perspective, it's about the consumer that might not have that distinction, because when the dopamine's all linked.
Now, to be fair, that's absolutely, and forgetting the whole dopamine argument or in ways people won't be able to put together, there is also a lot to be said about people who don't understand the distinction between fantasy and reality. And that's true. I absolutely, I don't have reason to disbelieve that. But you know what? That's just one of those things. Remember, this is the real world.
Linked to consuming pornography, then they're not able to, have that kind of that dichotomy that you're able to have.
I do think that there is a link between the morality and the health. So, I just don't, I think it's too simplistic to say that masturbation or masturbation to pornography specifically, sure, you get oxytocin, you get dopamine, you get serotonin. Okay, there's a ton of stuff that gives you those three chemicals, perhaps in higher doses, that are terrible for you. Things that anyone with sense would say, we probably shouldn't be doing that. So I think that just, having one facet of, all right, this is healthy because we get feel-good chemicals.
But I'm curious, because the prompt being, what it was just objectively, masturbation is healthy. That was the prompt. So what, not like taking porn out of it, what makes masturbation unhealthy in your opinion?
Yeah, Logan, I love what you said, actually, is that, masturbation in and of itself, I don't know that it has health benefits, and that prostate cancer thing is the world's oldest excuse for people who have compulsive masturbation.
But is it true?
It don't.
No, actually, I've looked into the research, and people who compulsively masturbate have less healthy prostates as they age. So the big distinction.
Well, to be fair, that's just the sort of thing I would just say. I don't necessarily believe in the idea that masturbation, solves, is going to stop prostate cancer, because here's the thing, guys. It might, if it happens, guess what? All of that jacking off is to the point where your dick becomes about the girth of the lead in a pencil. No, it's not going to do any. Well, what good is all that masturbating done then? And who's to say it's specifically prostate cancer? It could be penis cancer, it could be skin cancer, liver cancer, stuff like that. It doesn't. I think there's I think we need to debunk that. I can't see Mythbusters wanting to rock up anytime soon, mostly because Grandma Mahara's no longer with us.
Is compulsive or not compulsive. But when pornography is in the mix, masturbation becomes compulsive because it's linked to all that dopamine again.
This is the way I see it, right? So you have a spiritual cup, you have a mental cup, and you have a physical cup. And I feel like me masturbating would drain one of those. I couldn't distinct which one it would be, but I just realized it would spill out the water in each of those cups into different areas of my life, and that would lead to negative things. So I guess a question I would have for you is do you think that your industry serves people in a healthy way? Someone
Yeah, no, and I feel that, and I think it's a person-to-person basis. I don't think my industry necessarily serves in any specific way. I don't think it's necessarily. It's a video. At the end of we made a video, and then how you consume that product is however you got to deal with that.
And that's where the compulsive masturbation piece comes in, right? It does desensitize the brain, the dopamine receptors, and going back to that connection piece, it connects.
Well, I will also say this, because I feel like I'm starting to mellow out a little bit, but then again, let's be completely real about this. If you're watching porn and all that, trust me, you are not watching it to work out or wonder whether the plumber is actually going to fix the bathroom. Let's just be real about that.
A person to themselves, right? To a screen in their hand.
Porn is inherently anti-feminist. Agreeers, please step forward.
Well, so,
oh God, I don't even know where I'm meant to start with this one. I'll tell you maybe why it is, possibly, because it's also very. I think it's also very male dominated, or in terms of, well, the actual. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be any well, sometimes subgenres, niches come into it, but you know what? And I suppose again there's also a specific point to say when where something just straight up something looks uncomfortable and looks to be almost on the point of, well, more violence. Now I suppose where that line is sort of blurred because, one, I don't think any respectable studio or porn stars would intentionally put out stuff that was just designed to be as violent as possible, or try to sell the idea that this is absolutely the way to behave or the right thing to do. I think a lot of people who work in that are very, very wary of the implications of stuff like that. Not just to those who haven't seen that sort of thing before, but then again, of course people know fine well being violent towards women is not a good idea. I don't think you're kind of preaching to the choir on that one. But one thing I do... But then, of course, you know what? There's also plenty of niches and stuff like that where the shoe is on the other foot, where men are more... it's specifically called fandom, and it is where men are more subservient and women are far more dominant. And you know what? That it satisfies the people who take part in it. It probably satisfies the people who watch that sort of thing. But let's not forget, and just this one other thing before we go on. Remember when OnlyFans pretty much first started out back in 2018? I think it was around about that period anyway. But it meant that a lot of porn stars who felt trapped under contractual obligations from big studios, they could pretty much do their work completely solo, completely cut out the middleman, and they can earn anything that they wanted through the things that they do. So it gives a lot of porn stars, a lot of them male, but almost a lot of them female, including much, much larger names. It gives them the ability to actually just make money completely by their own, and some people absolutely thrive and live off that. Now, some people will still say, but you know what, OnlyFans still takes a small percentage of a commission based on, purchases, taxing, and stuff like that. But considering, you know what, that they are able to do it and nobody is out there to stop them, I'd say that's, whether you want to say that's progressive for feminism or whether or not, it doesn't really matter either way, because it means that you run the risk of trying to glamorize it by saying to people, well, more people who can't get into it for one reason or another, there's a much easier route to do in, and that's just sort of how it is. Some people will immediately say you also open the doors to a lot more means of exploitation or other means, and like I said before, some people will try and do that, and those people are absolute scumbags for doing that, and it's the sort of thing that people will absolutely pick up on very, very quickly. So, no, by the way, my response is no. Porn is not inherently anti-feminist, but I can also understand absolutely why some people think it would be. Which is kind of interesting how Dr. Trish, there's only one person who's come forward who thinks porn is. So let's hear him out. Let's be fair. We're all friends here. I hope.
I'm assuming that we're using the definition that feminism is for equal rights for men and women. I think that it sort of has to be anti-feminist in a way, because if we're talking about feminism in the context of women as fully fleshed human beings that have inherent value, I think it does the exact opposite of that. I think that it diminishes, more specifically women, but I think everyone who's taking part in the pornography is diminished to nothing more than a sexual object, than essentially a warm body to masturbate with. Wow, the great...
Again, I'll just say this again. First of all, for those who specifically are gay porn stars, I don't necessarily feel like that's going to be of the opinion, because one, men attracted to men. I don't know where necessarily the question of women necessarily falls into this necessarily, What I am also going to say, for the record, is that, you know what? What about lesbian porn? What about women who fantasize and fall head over heels for other women? How is that anti-feminist? I'd say it's very, very pro-feminist, because it means free love. And you know what? I say this is in the 1960s, but think about what we have learned and gone through since the 1960s.
Success of feminism is that now I can sell my body to the highest bidder online.
Let's bring everybody else in. We can have a discussion about this.
Boy,
and I look forward to hearing what y'all think of as feminist in this context.
I would love to start.
Oh, go for it. You don't have to wait to be called on.
So, as a woman, speaking about feminism, we're bringing up the definition of feminism and saying it was having equal rights. If anything, women have more rights than men in the porn industry, especially on like large.
Now, you know what, Dan? I will absolutely say that. You know what? I couldn't agree with her more. You know why? Because I think honestly, I think porn might be the only industry in the entire world where actually men are treated as almost second class compared to women. Now, maybe second class is putting a bit of that's quite a strong way to describe it, but, well, how many successful male porn stars can you actually name off the top of your head? There are some names that do get mentioned around, like, Johnny Sins, Dredd, Manuel Ferreira, Tommy Gunn, I guess, Mr. Lucky POV. Well, that's 5. Johnny Loves You. I'm sure there's more, but right now, or Alex Mack. He's kind of like Mr. Lucky's best friend and stuff like that. Ricky Johnson. Okay, so far we have 8. I know I've already said Manuel Ferreira. Yeah, that's so far we have 8. At least the ones certainly I could probably name off the top of my head. And, well, think about all the women who do this. I'd say if you really want to know what it probably would be like, I would say in terms of the proportion of women to men, I think women dominate the porn scene by something roughly about 78 to 1 or something about that. It might even be extremely higher than that. 78 is probably a very, very generous estimate.
Large sets, I get a person to follow me around all day, make sure I'm comfortable. I also, everything's always about the woman. I get paid twice as much as the man on the set. Yeah, so that's my personal opinion on it. I think if anything, it lifts women up and gives them a platform to have confidence. And
yeah, women dominate that whole entire industry. They make millions, more than the guys do. But the gay performers, they make money too. So, but women dominate the whole entire porn industry and make a killing.
You're assuming that.
Also, just for the sake of it, I have also heard that. No, I thought there was something about it. I was about to say something about, well, what about the people who are bisexual? Even then, it's still more dominated by women than it is by men. And how many actual bisexual porn stars can you actually name? The sort of people who will do men, but will also do women. And without wanting to turn this into an argument about what's the difference between a woman having sex with another woman versus a man having sex with another man, that's, and before you immediately start saying an STD test, get out of here. Although that is perfectly relevant. Well, it's important as well. Yeah, I suppose.
Me doing porn is only
forget about the argument about whether or not you're going to get prostate cancer or how you're going to avoid it if you jack off. Yet that is going to fall off before your arse does, if you're not careful.
society view me as a sexual object, when in reality, I have a whole life outside of porn. Like, yes, it's a big part of my life, but I also, I make YouTube videos. I paint, I read, I do all of these different things. I go to the beach. I'm a whole person, but just the general concept of just seeing women as sexual objects just because they're on camera having sex, I think that's a big issue.
You obviously are a full, complete person outside of what you do in front of the camera for pornography. I obviously would agree with that across the board. So you're just a means to an end for these men who are desperate at home.
Wow. Did he really just say that? You're just a means to an end. Wow. You know what? That actually would make... Okay. Okay, you know what? Actually, you know what? The more I think about it, I've actually got a big issue with that. Because, you know what? Calling somebody a means to an end, and he just said you're a complete person. And then he immediately says that, but then some people would say you're just a means to an end. That's dreadful. I'm sorry, I've no way. That is absolutely dreadful. What a horrible thing to say. And even Jay, he looks kind of uncomfortable with that, I think. Bloody mouse, there we go.
And want to get off. And they think that you're not a real, full human being. They just think that you're a body that's doing something attractive. And
not with OnlyFans these
You're
days.
assuming that everyone's having the same experience when they're masturbating to porn. So for me, not only with the Pornhub and all the studios that I've shot for, all these men that are coming to me, I feel like I do pretty well with attracting people that are just so loving. They make me feel so seen and celebrated as a person. I just had my 3-year porniversary yesterday. So wow. I made a post about that, obviously, and all these comments of I love you, I've loved getting to know you. And it's just been such an eye-opening experience seeing all these men who you might have that assumption that they just masturbate to porn because they're just trying to come. But a lot of men I've come in contact with, they're widowed, they don't have a wife anymore.
This is a huge one.
It's just a lot of different scenarios. So yeah, I just don't like making that big assumption about men.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, I think, from the science, because my perspective is informed by not only neuroscience, but I work with thousands of men who have recovered or are in the process of recovering from porn, is that intimacy that they feel towards you isn't true intimacy. So when a widower reaches out to you and now is building a false intimacy or distorted intimacy, then, like Asher was saying, then he's not going back.
I think there's a very specific phrasing. It's it's a parasocial relationship. Yeah, and that's the other thing I want to say is that, again, it's that whole thing about not being able to discern fantasy from reality anymore, and you see both as exactly the same. It's a huge mistake. And it's the sort of thing that actually will cause a lot more problems than anyone will anticipate. Chiefly because it's the person on the other side, the actual star, knows nothing about the sort of people who are jacking off to them, and doesn't know anything else about them. And again, even for people like Violet Myers, when they also have that level of presence via Twitch and YouTube, it's probably just and also it's also absolutely true for people who don't even work for porn at all. There are plenty of Twitch streamers, YouTubers who get these sorts of messages and DMs and stuff like that on a daily basis. That sort of thing is more degrading, but you can always just ignore them and not listen to them. And some people will also consider it extremely endearing that, you know what, they have fans at all. And even then, those who are just saying, that was really funny, well done, and stuff like that. But is it a sign of desperation? And I don't mean desperation in a truly negative sense, but, well, something must have happened along the way. That's all I'm going to say.
Back into the world to meet a real human being that he could make the connection with. And what I think about, like in terms of, you know, the porn industry and feminism, it's more like the authenticity and healthy purpose, and, you know, really going out there and doing the thing that, you know, is in your heart that you want to add to the world.
Is it possible, just a follow-up question, is it possible for that there to be a bridge where it is okay? Where, like, say with the widower example, where is it always bad?
I think so, based on the science too, because science shows that basically then those neural pathways are being fired up towards the high level of dopamine from pornography, which makes it almost impossible for most people, and this is the compulsive addictive nature, for those pleasure pathways to be linked to real world experiences. That's what.
Now, again, when you hear something like that, again, you're torn both ways. She seems to view the idea of jacking off to somebody after you've been widowed as bad, but is she also of the opinion that, well, you need to hold, you can't move on from somebody? Is that what we're trying to get at? Yeah, it's stuff like that. You're gonna have to be a bit. So, because which one is it? Are you saying that people are not allowed to move on, or what? What is the distinction we're trying to make here? That you're not allowed to move on, or, well, that there's a limit, but based on what? Because of science? This is like the second or third time she said that, but it's like as though science is the one that determines absolutely everything for this.
What all the neuroscience shows is that these pathways in the brain are just being traversed back towards porn. Very difficult to, you know, then build pleasure in real life.
She get into the science of it all.
I know.
But going back to like the anti-feminist thing, because you are right in the fact that, like, obviously there are there's guys online are very mean to a lot of the girls in the industry, but I don't think that how people perceive you doing a thing makes that thing anti-feminist, because like they said, obviously a lot of guys like really support them and like feel like they know them on a personal level, but then yeah, there's people who like, and especially if a lot of these girls, if they go and do something after porn, there's plenty of people who are just gonna be like, oh, she's always just gonna be a porn star. So like, but I don't think that makes it inherently anti-feminist. I think that's more of just an issue on these guys and just how they're viewing women.
No, I definitely believe that it can empower women.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, like you have fans that appreciate you and what you do. But that's like a whole different side. What he was mentioning is that there's men that.
And you know what? I do agree that maybe this is more of a man issue, with the fact that all of a sudden slut shaming is exactly what it's called. But let's not forget, guys. Tell me if you ever listened to the band In This Moment. Do you remember the song they did? I think it was called Whore. Well, if you don't, let me give you the 411 on that. The idea is that they took the word whore and they turned it into something extremely positive. And not in the sort of way you're probably expecting, but that's how you turn that sort of thing around. You make it look like you make it a point of endearment or a means of being powerful, whereas people will use it as a means of an insult. And they use it as an insult because they mean it to have some level of offense. You don't give offense in the ordinary sense. Offense is more what is interpreted to be offensive. In the same way that when there are some things in porn where sometimes it looks a bit violent about why people are fascinated by choking and stuff like that. Again, we could easily sit here and say that looks barbaric and we don't know, we can't see how can anybody view that as being erotic. But just because we don't do it, or we don't find it, doesn't mean other people don't find it erotic. Or maybe there is something more going on that perhaps we're just not seeing. But what I can say is, well, again, if they have no first-hand experience working in it, then how would they know? Or what do these guys actually like? Or do some of these guys have any interest in, being in a relationship? Maybe some of them are virgins or something like that, and have no first-hand experience whatsoever. That doesn't mean to say they're right, but does it mean they're wrong? But how can they be either way? If I think your ideas and your perspectives really do come into question when you do taste the apple, so to speak.
Do you view women as an object as a result of watching porn? So it's just like, how do we direct like which way to go? Because like for me, I viewed women as an object for a little bit of my life because that's what my idea was from watching porn, and that's pretty much all I knew. I didn't have like a natural relationship. It was all artificial. So I guess what I'm asking is how can we, empower women in a different way, and and link it back to like men appreciating women. Like,
But what if women don't mind being appreciated for their sexual?
And you know what? I don't understand, because he literally just said that he didn't view women like that when he was trying to get into porn. So why is he only of the opinion now that he's trying to view women like that? Just because I have a feeling this guy was not liked, and that's why he was pushed out. I think there's more to why he didn't get in than I think he's letting on. And because he stated that as though it was a matter of fact, there was something that it wasn't really convicting him in some way. And again, Dan is absolutely right. Well, if you actually do admire and appreciate women, then you've also got to appreciate the things that, including the things that you find a little bit, out there, like their personality or their sexual energy or stuff like that. And yeah, that's like, and the more I watch this, the more I'm beginning to realize, you know what? The more I'm beginning to realize, you know what? Maybe there's something, there's a lot more to it. Maybe it's more about just trying to get to know people, and maybe just about knowing people to such an extent that actually you like them far more than you realized.
Side, that's something I don't mind. Well, for those men that come in and view me as an object, I view them as a paycheck.
That's a
That's a bar.
I don't mind.
That's a good compromise.
I don't mind, and then the people who come in and do value me, I also value them too, and I also ask them about how their life is going on, and a lot. To be honest, to bring up something, I'm not sure if I'm going to have a chance to bring it up. I have a lot of functioning autistic people and stuff like that on my page who are just way too scared to get out there in public. They're hardly functioning on their own, and this is something that they can finally get their first sexual experience with a woman. And I talk to them. It's a beneficial relationship, and I guess it just depends on how you perceive that, if it's negative or positive. For me, I perceive it as a positive thing for them.
My work has always surrounded people on the autistic spectrum too. If they're, basically connecting themselves to you neurobiologically with dopamine, then it would be even more difficult for them to create those real world connections.
But what is the right way to go about that then?
It's about what you feel is right or not, and we don't feel that way.
Well, it's not opinions that I'm talking about. These are scientific facts that
you're
are
saying what is
documented.
negative?
Oh, okay. Oh, Trish, you had me, and now it's okay, ladies. So now you're going to be of the opinion that it's scientific facts that autistic people can't. You know what? As somebody who has Asperger's syndrome, can I just say for the record right now, just because I don't really have issues that much with talk. I have more issues with larger crowds and stuff like that, especially if it's around people I absolutely don't know. Fair enough. I don't think you have to be on any sort of spectrum to just find those sorts of things uncomfortable. What is uncomfortable, however, is people telling me that it's a matter of fact and not of any opinion, or not based on any external factors like environment, how you were parented, how you grew up, what you were taught. Anything like that at all. all of that, the environment, it completely goes out the window because science says it's not a fact. But please, Doctor, please tell me how... I think Dan is going to get into a fight with her, I bet, because honest to God, I've never heard such... Let's hear that again, just in case I missed something.
Are positive. For me, I perceive it as a positive thing for them.
My work has always surrounded people on the autistic spectrum, too. If they're, basically connecting themselves to you neurobiologically with dopamine, then it would be even more difficult for them to create those real-world connections.
But what is the right way to go about that?
Because bear in mind, people on the spectrum can discern the difference between somebody who is a porn star and somebody who isn't. I'm just saying.
It's about what you feel is right or not, and we don't feel that way.
Well, it's not opinions that I'm talking about. These are scientific facts that
Well, you're saying
are
what is negative? You're saying it's negative for an autistic man to have a relationship with a woman online. We don't see it that way.
What I want for people is they can connect with real human beings and have a back and forth of intimacy in the real world.
Yeah, I would love that for them.
Yeah, no,
I
I
love
totally
that.
agree with that. But I'm just curious as far as like with that, at what point does it fall on the responsibility of the sex worker itself? There are plenty of people who don't feel like they can make connections in real life and they turn to that. And I agree, I would always advise anyone to go out and make real connections. But if they are choosing not to, is that the responsibility of us?
Well, this is what I know from the people that I work with is that, they've gone that route for a very long time and it's led them to depression and it's led them to extreme anxiety because they are trying to fill a gaping hole in an artificial way. They eventually feel empty and they
I don't think it's artificial. Physical sensation is about as real as anything else, if you ask me. The thing I always because bear in mind, sometimes I have sometimes it's also that about whether or not it's that feeling of acceptance. I think also, you know what? Some people have difficulty communicating. Some people are very, very erudite and even more articulate than probably anyone will ever give them credit for. Sometimes people just want to be loved. Sometimes they just want to be accepted. Sometimes they want to be heard. And some people want to be listened. Maybe porn stars may not necessarily be the best way in the world, but you know what? It might be for things very specific that is actually might be more relevant than anyone would say otherwise. What I don't like, however, is the idea that physical sensation is artificial or something that somebody is actually going through is not considered real because it doesn't impact Dr. Trish's life. It might not impact her life, but it will affect somebody else's. I'm just going to press the space bar. There we are.
They, don't want to have that artificial experience anymore. They want it in real life.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think part of the question was, is the onus on the sex worker? Is there blame to be had on the part of the sex worker?
Oh, no, not at all. But I don't know that, enjoying taking a person away from real world connection, like you're proposing that it's a good thing that you're there for those people. Where I would contend if you weren't doing that, then they would have to, like Asher said, they'd have to get back into their life. And even though it's difficult, they would, they want it. They really want that connection. So they would start doing that instead of watching porn.
Man.
I always encourage my fans to live their lives and go out there. And a lot of men come to me with confidence issues. They're like, I just had someone last week saying, like, give me your top 3 tips on confidence. And whatever came to me, I typed it out. And I was like, you do with that as you wish, and I know it's not my responsibility to be their therapist because I'm not. Yeah, there's a lot of
where the dopamine
loneliness.
Dependency comes in because they are linked to you. Like when partners have sex with each other, neurobiologically they become linked through dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. So that's happening in an artificial way. So then they come to you for advice, where if they weren't consuming porn, they would go to their friends.
Doctor, can I ask a question? You do realize you're starting to sound like somebody out of an Aldous Huxley novel. This is beginning to sound a little too much like Brave New World. As though she's describing humans as though they're just a series of components. And there's nothing actually... and that's it. She may understand as a concept, but... Well, actually, no, I don't think that anything she said illustrates that anything is based on concept and more based on scientific fact. She doesn't, by any chance, read the Daily Mail, does she?
Friends or their parents or their siblings or someone, at Starbucks that they connected with.
When the addiction is like so detrimental to your life that it's no longer serving you or giving you what you want, then to me, then that's a problem. So like, for example, if you want a partner, right, and you keep going to the porn, and as soon as you rub it out and get that post-nut clarity, you're like, man, girls. You know what I mean, right? Like if you get to that point, that's a problem. You know what I mean, right? Because that's not what you want. But at the same time, if it's just like, you know what, I just want to feel good for a little bit. And afterwards, you're like, man, they still human beings. Like, I'm having a great day. I don't see a problem
Yeah,
with
but
that.
that's instant gratification. I actually liken pornography addiction to an eating disorder more than gambling. And it's like, if you have an eating disorder to chocolate cake with blue dye and red dye on the frosting, with all those jimmies in there that are scientifically proven to be terrible for you because of the chemicals, like the baker's not at fault. The baker loves baking, so I understand that, but the consumer has to go, do I want to eat this cake with the dyes?
And I want to respond to that too, because I have a nasty little sweet tooth addiction, right? Like I used to love cake,
It's dopamine.
Danishes, all that stuff. But I realized I felt like shit when I was eating all that. So what I do to satisfy my shit, I started just eating fruit. And the fruit was good. So instead of me just getting the nuts from like porn and whatnot, which, if that's what you want, I just want a real woman.
Let's move on to the next topic, shall we?
So,
Post-nut clarity I'm going to be borrowing.
oh, I know. And
Rub it out. Oh shit, what am I doing?
I've suffered from porn addiction. Will the agreeers please step forward?
My porn addiction started when I was around like my teen years, my younger teen years, 13 years old. It started from just playing Geometry Dash or just a little game on my iPad. There was an ad that popped up, and it was an ad to like an adult website, and leading into my young or older teens and 20s, that's where I started suffering from addiction. Just doing it every day, stuck in this loop of not understanding why I'm not, completing the things that I need to complete, and not like excelling the way that I saw myself that I needed to excel. And so started having bad relationships with my friends, my family, gone to drugs, gone into excessive alcohol consumption. And so I recognized a pattern, and I was like, I need to get out of this loop. And so I think that thing for me was to stop watching pornography. And ever since that day, man, it's made a huge change in my life. So,
Do you consider yourself in recovery today, or how would you describe where you are now?
Definitely. So I'm
I suppose maybe the only thing I can say, because it would be a bit of a pretentious thing to say that, you know what, porn addiction doesn't exist, because it does exist. I do believe that. I don't consider myself to be an addict. What I do think, however, is that, well, define addiction. What counts? What is the, as Dr. Trish will put it, the scientific fact about what counts as an addiction? Because there are also plenty of people who just straight up, well, do grow bored of it at some point. But then what if it just becomes more of a just thing you just do unconsciously? Like, you don't think about it, you just get on with it. Does that count as an addiction as well? Because you're not like craving for it, it's just sort of, you're more in a loop than anything.
I'm over a year away from fapping as a whole, and now I'm on the journey of helping other men discover, what the reason is for them watching porn or fapping in the first place, and maybe showing them an alternative way to release their energy.
I was also exposed to it pretty young, probably 12, 13. And since then, it was pretty much the primary source of sexual education.
Now, of course, I would have also said, puberty and stuff like that. It's when most young men do discover girls. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but again, I think that's just sort of how it happens, isn't it?
That I had, I assumed that porn was the way that sex happened in real life. And, it thankfully never got to the point where I was, outwardly, abusive or anything to anybody else, but certainly changed my life for the worse. And, ever since I decided to stop doing it, pretty much everything's just been uphill.
So how would you describe where you are today?
Well, I did have somewhat of a reversion back to my religion, to Catholicism, so right now I'd say I'm, again, probably on the road to recovery. It's been quite a while since I've had to, fall back into it, but feeling and looking good right now. So,
cool. Well, let's bring in the disagreeers, and maybe we can have a larger discussion. You can step on forward.
There'd probably be a self-control sort of thing.
I actually used to be a background porn actor. So
background porn actor?
Yeah.
What's the difference between regular and background?
So the regular folks is but but I wasn't I was just the actor in the scenes. The first scene I ever did was with Kendall Woods and Jake Adams. So it was like be more like your stepsister scene. And I was just one of the friends of the stepbrother who ended up his sister in the scene. Oh, wow. But I've done like 18 different porn scenes. Yeah. And then afterwards, after that, I could just never watch like professional porn again. I watched the scenes I'm in. But you know what I mean? Like I watched that, like, damn, I did some good acting today, you know what I mean? But so I don't have a problem with porn per se, but I do think it depends on your goal.
So, funny story, when I was growing up, well, obviously you stumble upon porn. I started watching it, and I had this like deep shame about it. In like high school, college, I had serious relationships for like years, and I never like caught any of them watching porn, but just the thought of them watching it got me so like jealous and insecure. I've really worked through my own issues of feeling insecure about it, and got into the business myself. So like any argument really, I just feel like there's like so much middle ground because we're on middle ground. So that's my little backstory.
There it is. I'd love to hear from you guys, but feel free to, it's a conversation.
I do feel like it's kind of unfortunate that like porn addiction doesn't really get taken that seriously for some reason. And I think you can't necessarily compare it to drug addiction, but I think you have to look at it sort of like a gambling addiction and things like that, which I had gambling addiction in the past too, and it's a lot of that mental, you know what I mean? And I've seen how it can, really mess people up, like that compulsion with it, and it messes up their personal sex lives and stuff. So I do sympathize with that, and yeah, I do think it needs to be a discussion more about the serious of the addiction aspect of it.
What I found in the neuroscience research is that young people, kids, find porn, and then the seeds of addiction are planted then, so nobody identifies with the idea of addiction, and you even mentioned compulsion. So, use kind of transitions to abuse and then compulsion, and then addiction shows up later on, and usually, when it's pretty late for a person by the time they identify this is a full-blown addiction.
Yeah, truthfully, I feel like more people probably have a problem with it than they even realize or like admit to it. Because even like a lot of like on the fan platforms and stuff, like the people that we talk to, like the fans and stuff, some of them are like, brother, you probably gotta relax a little bit. But like, and it's nothing against, I love my job, I love this industry in so many ways, but I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that like some people probably shouldn't be consuming this because it's just not, it doesn't work for their brain. And
you're totally right. It's a dopamine dependency that's linked to sexuality. So the context of gambling is very much the same in terms of the neurobiological mechanism. So you're spot on with that it's the dopamine they're addicted to from sex. Someone would have enjoyed sexuality, healthier sexuality, which has its own definitions with a partner, instead of fetishes and things that are very high dopamine producing.
So let me say something. At first I said it depends on your goal, right? So like, for example, I don't want to watch porn because when I used to rub it out, I used to feel like, damn, like I'd rather be with a real person right now, you know what I mean? So it was fucking with my confidence, my ego and all that. But by going no fap for literally a whole year, I still got needs. So I was forced to go out there and go meet people, and I was meeting women. You know what I mean? So it was real experiences versus just a computer screen. So it really depends on your goal.
All right, let's move on to the next topic, guys.
All right.
No fap leads to more loyalty in relationships. Agreeers, please step forward. I'm hearing a lot of chuckles. This is fun.
I feel like the loyalty, mainly it remained in like.
Now, again, this may be one of those things where I straight up would not know. The closest I've ever been to being in a relationship was when Kay Forsyth told me to fuck off when I was 17. That's about as close as I'm ever gonna get. That which just about says it all, doesn't it? Aside from that, I couldn't think of any if I was in a relationship, to be fair, I wouldn't be masturbating anyway. But what about literally everything else? I mean, I'll say I could say that, you know, I don't fap, and I'll say that to my good missus and all that. It doesn't mean to say she's going to automatically believe it or not. How can you prove to somebody that you're not fapping if you just don't do it and you just continue to show her that you don't do it? You think sexuality is the only thing that actually matters in a relationship?
Like my relationships with other people, not just my friends, but just like my partners that I had previously, I definitely felt like it's like kind of like cheating, right? You get with a person, or at least I did, you know, to gain a connection, pleasure and knowledge, wisdom, whatnot, right? But I feel like once you find it elsewhere, or know that you can get it from yourself, would you even need the other person? And so I guess that would disrupt the loyalty, in the sense of, like, you don't really need anyone else. You don't need that connection. So why do you have to be loyal to someone else?
I am of the opinion, and I'm assuming he would be too, is that any amount of pornography is by definition a breach in loyalty of a committed romantic relationship between two people, because essentially what you're doing is you are replacing the person that you are with for good reasons and replacing them with essentially just a distorted image of a sexual object in order to satisfy yourself instead of fully loving them.
Got it.
There's a reason I believe that love is associated with loyalty, or loyalty is associated with love, not lust. And I feel like a lot of the porn industry is lust-based more than love. So, like I said, like, therefore, it would be more loyalty and love together.
Got it.
So,
Let's bring the
I'm curious
disagreeers in, because I feel some rumbling of disagreement, and I would really like to.
I could hear it. I could hear it.
And I encourage you guys to feel free to interrogate each other's positions, because we're here to learn. We're here to expand our own thoughts. So
I'm both, to be honest.
Oh, fascinating. Tell us more.
Can I be?
Wow. Yeah.
I think it could help a relationship for sure. Maybe, you know, it would help to focus on that one person. But I also think that it can also help a relationship in the opposite way of things, where it could, maybe I'm busy and I can't provide that to my partner and I don't want them to look elsewhere.
Yep.
So feel free to use online, you know, if you want to have that little sexual experience for that time, you know, that's fine with me personally. So I think it's, you know, I think it's a give and a take. It can be either one depending on your relationship.
I think in a lot of ways it varies relationship to relationship. A lot of partners aren't going to care if their partner watches porn sometimes, and it doesn't make them a worse partner. It doesn't mean that they won't satisfy their.
Mind you, it also probably would concern me about what my partner was fapping to, I suppose. I've heard of this thing called SpongeBob Square Nuts, but I don't really want to look too deeply into it. No, probably not.
Their partner in other ways, or like really fully commit to them. But I also think that there is a big aspect to it, of like, if you're constantly seeking that pleasure elsewhere instead of your partner, then obviously there's a problem with that. But I think it's just way too complicated of an issue to like boil it down to just like, oh, this makes you a more loyal partner than.
I don't think there's nothing wrong with it. Just find somebody that match your kink. That's all I think.
Yeah,
That's somebody that match your kink. That's it to it.
I agree with you in that there's a measure called emotional intelligence. So emotionally intelligent or emotionally mature people want loyalty in a partner. And love comes in 3 phases, going back to what you were saying. There's lust, romantic love, and bonded love. And I've been married for 23 years. So 23 years later in marriage, you have bonded love because, you know, the crap's hit the fan lots of times. You don't stay together just for a great sex life, you know. You stay together because you've weathered the storm together. So, like, emotionally intelligent people want that loyalty in a partner. It's kind of like, you know, 2 alcoholics. 2 alcoholics can have a blast drinking, but that doesn't make them 2 healthy people.
Interesting. I hear some
Some rumblings.
So, so me being with a partner and like us watching porn together, like that, you compare that to us being two alcoholics.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Just
I
because we
just
want to
disagree
spice
with
it
that.
up a little, we just want to watch other.
Yeah, I mean, alcoholism, it's not quite the same, is it?
Yeah, because
have
it's
sex.
it's still objectification. Like if you're watching other people have sex, you are no longer having a sexual experience in and of itself. Like it takes you out of the present and it puts you into fantasy. Fantasy is hypersexualized, which means in your experience with your partner, you're looking for level 15 dopamine instead of the happiness trifecta. And so a lot of people are doing that, and
The
they're trying.
happiness. Trish, do you know actually anybody in the real world who actually uses this terminology just to I know, I get... Can we just... Why can't we just say, there are people who just want to be a bit more loyal, but you know what? Forget about loyalty. Anybody who just has that level of respect for each other will just do the right thing and just be honest with each other. It should start with some level of honesty, and depending on what happens is a moot point, but the thing to mention is that, well, some people do things and they think they can get away with it just because they don't come clean.
Trying to get, maximum pleasure out of a sexual experience with their partner, but that means you don't get to enjoy that rounded out experience.
Some things could just be for fun, you know what I mean? Like I don't think it makes it less intimate. If a couple is watching porn together, I don't think that makes their regular sex life less intimate. If they just want to spice things up one night, have fun. It's the same like sometimes couples who have never done bondage before, they might do it one night and then like that's like I'm sure that's a lot of dopamine, like a huge rush on that particular night because it's trying something new. But that doesn't mean that now they can't have regular sex experiences with their partner. I don't see why.
It's like, like having a French meal. Like you're having this really rounded, beautiful meal, but then you've got a huge piece of chocolate cake over here.
If a couple is watching porn together.
I don't understand. I don't see the connection. Can you please explain it to me? Also, they refer to it as gâteau, not just chocolate cake. A pan au chocolat. If we're gonna get serious now about when you bring food into this now.
Together chooses to watch porn together sometimes, that's always unhealthy.
I think so, based on the scientific studies. It means you're going for this rush from the think about a natural experience doesn't include a screen with other people. That makes it an unnatural experience. So generally speaking, things that are healthy for us are the natural things that exist in our present real world life. Then, when you use porn, you're trying to ramp that experience up on steroids. And, a lot of the people I work with, when they stop doing that, they have such fulfillment with their partner.
Are you saying that say I got married, am I not allowed to think anyone else is attractive other than my partner? Is that cheating?
No. I mean, obviously, if you see someone attractive, you think they're attractive, but that's different than lusting. Like lusting, I work with a lot of people who are attempting to find other people attractive instead of lusting after every person who walks by them on the street. And again, it goes back to dopamine. So maybe you don't have it, because again, I don't know what your brain is doing. If you see a person and they're attractive, it just registers on the nervous system like this, like a tap. But for people with lusting, that person walks by and they're thinking, the dopamine's flowing in their brain, they cannot stop thinking about that person. It's lust, hypersexuality.
I personally think my partner should be allowed to if they're feeling like they need to masturbate, go do it. If you need to watch porn and do that, I'm not like I said when I was younger.
Mind you, with that being said, also this comes down to whether I would just say to my partner, listen, I know you're grieving right now, but I'm gonna go and knock one off thinking about Tilly Big Tits. So just you sit here and continue to grieve, and I'll try not to scream too much. I know this must be very distressing, but just in case you do hear screaming, just so you know.
Like a teenager, I was really insecure, and I couldn't handle the fact that any of my partners thought that someone else was attractive because I had like really deep-seated issues, and I worked through those.
I'm curious too, as far as like maybe the other side of that, as well as maybe sheltering yourself off too much in a relationship. Could that not cause, I guess, this over curiosity that causes you to end up just sort of breaking and being unloyal?
Yeah, like hyposexuality, do you mean?
Yeah, like I think like I feel like there's also an argument to be made that kind of like sheltering yourself out from like not masturbating and only like looking at this or not looking at this partner, but like not masturbating at all, not having any other release other than with a partner, that can sort of like your curiosity as far as like, okay, what is life without this partner be like, and then it could drive you to cheat maybe.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because you use the word release, as does Asher here a lot, by the way. So the idea of,
Asher is meant to be on your side, Trish. Don't, start... Oh, dear. Don't start patronizing him as well.
Release is a hypersexual thought in and of itself. Like you have to, again, one of my mentors said nobody ever died from not masturbating.
Of course, but I'm saying, but it still happens. It's how people think. It's how it happens. So if you're completely shutting yourself off from personal self-pleasure, could that not happen as far as just like...
Definitely, and when it comes to NoFap, and I told Ryan this when we started, I don't know if I really like anchor into the idea of NoFap, because I really anchor into the idea of healthy sexuality. And when you think of like, they call it monk mode, where people just go no sexuality. So I joke with people all the time, I'm going to tell you the scariest thing in the whole world. Communicate with your partner. What you like and what you find exciting, and then do all of those things. And some women are hyposexual, some men are hyposexual. It's about figuring it out, and so I think closing yourself off definitely isn't the way to do it either.
I love sex. Agreeers, please step forward.
They're just immediately...
This is one I can get behind.
I would say yes, of course. I love sex in the sense that it is the natural procreative action that brings together two people in a love so intense that it actually forms another human being if everything goes to plan.
That's why I stepped forward.
Yeah, I was about to say...
Again, I can also understand why people would say no. It's understandable, really. Some people may just see it as a fruitless exercise. Some people just see that it's nowhere near as fun as they make it out to be. Maybe that's also part of it. It's nowhere near as great as people make it out to be. All that glitters is not gold.
What brought you in?
Yeah, just like, that's the true intimacy, that's the true love. Like, that's what I believe sex was designed for, was to, have partners show love to each other and bring another human being into this world.
Other thoughts? You love sex.
I love sex. Sex is awesome. This sex is awesome.
Yep.
Sex rocks. Now, I obviously I'm in this industry, but I've had a girlfriend for 4 years as well. She's also in the industry, so I've had plenty of meaningless sex, and I've had plenty of and I will choose sex with my partner over anything, always.
Like just like with love, there's so many different kinds of love.
Right.
There's a lot of different kinds of sex you can have, and I think they're all fun. And even like back in the day, like there were like, I'm going into like the spirituality stuff, but there'd be groups of women that would have sex with each other, like sisterhoods. And like that wasn't for procreation. So.
I want to be in part of that.
Gotta start reading some books.
Sorry, I love everything about sex. Porn, filming porn, everything. How the way I feel when I'm having sex, how the way I'm being touched with having sex, the intimacy, the touch, the feel, everything. I just love it. Yeah.
So like your brain will literally attune to your partners. And
God's
attachment
sake.
theory, you become attached to your partner. And we know evolutionarily, like going back to the evolution piece.
Why does she say, why not you sexually attracted? Why does she keep... It's... Oh, dear me. It's like... I mean, I get it. Yes, I know where she's coming from, but I can also get it when somebody just says, when a man and a woman love each other very, very much,
Piece that
layman's terms.
this is what made people stick together and then create tribes for safety and procreation so that it's pleasurable too. And I've had 5 children, so it has to be pleasurable or you would literally never do it again and there'd be nobody here on earth, so, it's important.
And it is, you're in sort of the most vulnerable state you can be with another person, and it just everything going through your mind and just the way it's making your body feel, and it's you build so much trust in a short amount of time just off of that vulnerability of being in that environment with that person.
I love that. Do you feel that on set too?
I do.
You do?
Actually, yeah, I do.
I don't.
I have.
In
I
a lot of
personally don't
different
feel
ways. As far as attachment, things like that, I really only feel that with my partner, with my girlfriend. But as far as the trust and things like that, especially on set, and I guess it's a little different because we're performing, so we do have to have that trust as far as I will respect what you want me to do, what you don't want me to do. I won't hurt you. We won't hurt each other. We will make.
That's just giving me an idea. Okay, guys, hear this one out. I'll take this to Dragon's Den if I have to. It's called cake sex. How does it work? If you could have sex with somebody, with your partner as it may be, for 10 straight minutes and not get sick by the end of it, you win absolutely fuck all. So I think we could be onto a winner here. I'll give you all the money, but I want 69%. And yes, 2 hours into this, it's the first dumb joke I've actually made. I'm almost proud of myself. Until I wasn't.
Make a good scene. We're here to do a job, and that's it. And I'm not going to be.
It's a strong working relationship,
yeah.
right?
So
Like any.
So it is different in that way. I don't feel like genuine connections as far as like on a deeper level, I guess.
I usually can't even get off for the person on set. It's an acting job for me when it comes to my pro scenes. When it comes to my personal side, that's a different, that's a whole different story. But yeah, it's completely different for me.
Let's get our lone disagreeer here. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Don't get me wrong, like, I enjoy sex, right? But when I hear, like, I love sex, it's not so much the sex I love, it's more so the connection. So, like, even when, like, porn got room for me, it's like
that.
Like, when I realized how fake it was or how professional it is, it's like, damn, I used to think it was real.
Yeah.
So I was looking for women like that, you know what I mean, right? But it's just like, girls ain't like this for real, for real. I broke up with my ex 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And so when she finally moved out the house, like, I just wanted to feel something. Mm-hmm. So I just went on this little like whole phase. I remember in December, there was this one girl, well, we was having sex. Like, I remember like just mid-stroke, I was like, damn, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I just felt bad, and there was no real connection. And then after that, like, I stopped my little whole phase and was like looking for the real thing.
Taking into consideration the whole conversation we've had today, let's see if we can find a middle ground, something everybody can agree on. Feel free to pitch something.
I think everyone needs therapy.
I personally think maybe like there's a.
I agree on that. Maybe there should be a compulsory detox thing that studios or websites should have in place if you do feel that it's similar to what like the gambling industry has, is that everybody has the right to declare a self-exclusion clause. If you genuinely don't want to go back to a casino, then you can absolutely tell them that you're not interested, and they have the right to bar you so you are not a danger. Actually, that does sound like a really good idea, that, doesn't it?
You have to find whether or not something is abusive or not for yourself, if that makes sense. Like if you're compulsive, finding that issues, I guess, finding out what you're missing in yourself that's making you so dependent on something else is the biggest thing.
It's not as easy as to just make it like this black and white thing. It's just, okay, one side bad, one side good, one side healthy, one side unhealthy. I think it really is a case-by-case basis, and if there is any sense of like reliance or preferment over online things versus regular connections, obviously that's a bad thing. But I don't think it's as simple to just be like, okay, it's bad because some people have a problem with it.
I believe the middle ground is that it's on the consumer and not the person that's putting it out. So it's really up to us to really learn, like, is it for us? Like, is that what the ideal lifestyle that I want to have? Like, does that fit in it?
I don't know if I agree with that one, to be honest, because, like I said, it's kids, and you all said you found porn when you were young, and so, brains aren't developed then, so you're asking a 10-year-old to be able to decide what they can consume or not, and...
Is a 10-year-old...
Yeah, and I hear that too.
But I don't think kids should watch porn at all.
No.
Yeah.
But that is generally who finds porn. And we know that young people are the #1 consumers of porn.
I meant like people over the age of 18. Like that's what I meant to say.
Is that a scientific fact? Because that's the first time she said it, that as though it was a given, and she didn't say that. It's a scientific fact. Can I ask where she is getting her research from, by the way? Because she doesn't quote anything, does she?
Not like children, because there's definitely a big issue there. I guess we can also agree on that as well. Is like it's too accessible to people on screens, and that it even gets out to children. I think that we need to solve a problem towards that.
100%.
Totally.
100%.
I love that. That's great.
So one of the things we all agree on is that kids shouldn't be watching porn.
Yeah, P18 and above.
Yeah,
please.
and that's something like porn people get blamed for a lot. They're like, oh, the kids. It's like, dude, like kids don't have credit
Watch
cards.
your,
Like
watch
the
your
children.
kids.
We don't want them
The
watching
children. What about the children?
Yeah, it serves no benefit to us at all. Like,
on the parents.
Yeah, on this side, anything else y'all want to throw out there that maybe everybody can agree on?
For me, my middle ground is do whatever works for you. That's it.
I like it.
I like
Do whatever
that.
works for you.
I was just going to list off some things that I think we all agree on.
Also, I like
Which is-
Santana's
Porn addiction is bad.
Yep.
sweater.
Replacing your partner with pornography is bad. Sex is a beautiful thing. We can all, I think, agree on that. I think, at least for me, those are the 3 things that resonate the most.
Any disagreement? No. Sounds like we found a middle ground. Yeah. Congratulations.
Hey.
Yeah, we can fist bump. Fist bump. We can.
I know.
Yes.
I'm not as sweaty as I thought.
I was like,
There we go. Yes. Yes.
yeah, it's funny.
Hooray, they're having-
No, we're behind you.
Right. So I know we've been here already for a very, very long time, guys, but I'm just going to say, you know what? That was not a close one. So to sum up, I think that the common consensus is that, somehow put a contingency in which, children, can't consume adult entertainment online. I believe that was the sort of impression we had before we even started this video, and I think we can all collectively agree that it is basically a bad thing. With that being said, again, I'm surprised Dr. Trish didn't fly off the handle about some statistics saying that because of the post cognition of being able to stand up and show respect to each other, the endorphins in a person's brain will go up significantly more than mine, and that's okay. Like that, except somehow more of like that. But with all that being said and done, well, we leave them there all getting on together there. And, well, I think that's what? I don't really know what you're meant to say after being sit here for 2.5 hours, apart from, bye good.